Guy here with a quick message before we get on with the pod. As a thank you to our most dedicated and loyal viewers and listeners to Blood Red, we're inviting you to join our Blood Red Club. By joining, you'll get access to insider transfer content, as well as interviews with former favourites and those connected at Anfield. All you need to do is head to bloodredpodcast.co.uk, enter your email address, and our exclusive content will head to your inbox. That's bloodredpodcast.co.uk. Thanks. Now on with the show.
This is the Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red Podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Winning homecoming for the Reds. Mane off the mark. And Elliott imperious. Plus, a Shaq gap appears in the attack as Lyon close in on the Swiss's signature. Here to get into the win over Burnley, plus plenty more. We have our Liverpool correspondent, Paul Gorst, and Chief Liverpool writer Ian Doyle. Guys, we're back virtually again after Friday's antics getting around the city. But I'll come to you, Gorsty. You were there, obviously, at Anfield on Saturday for the win over Burnley. Biggest part was having the fans back.
Yeah, it was great. Long overdue, wasn't it? Close to 18 months. Anfield's been largely empty. It was great in December when they had the 2,000 in. It kind of gives a little bit of a little crumb of what we've been missing. And then the Palace game in May was a game that I was looking forward to for weeks, to be honest, even before we knew what Liverpool's situation was with the top four, just because, what a big difference to the entire spectacle that the fans make. And then we had the friendlies, which was another kind of big checkpoint. And then competitive Anfield, full, 54,000 all in, on time, no delays to kick off, and everything went swimmingly. So you never walk along before kick-off was great, and there was a little bit of a poignant moment before kick-off when they paid tribute to everyone who they've lost during the pandemic. People like Gerard Houllier and one or two others, Ray Clements, and yeah, it was a good afternoon all in all. The players delivered, fans kind of responded to it at times, and even the Burnley fans were having a little bit of a go as well. So all in all, a successful afternoon for Liverpool.
Yeah, sun shining as well. Doyle, it sounds like the afternoon that even you may well have had a smile across your face.
I may have smirked slightly, a slight smirk. Yeah, no, it was a good afternoon. Can't really add any more to what Gorsty said. I think basically it's what people do. I mean, it was interesting, wasn't it? Driving up to the ground. I know Gorsty got a little bit stuck in traffic. I got stuck in the rain, so I thought that whether or not that could have dampened things a little bit, but Jurgen Klopp came out afterwards and said that's probably the best 12:30 atmosphere we've ever had at a game, and to be honest, it always was going to be. I mean, you saw from the the "You'll Never Walk Alone," you heard it around the stadium before the game. The fans were just united in that they'd been looking forward to that for a very long time, and so were the players, and you could see that with the way that they played. As Ghosty said, Burnley came and they made a proper game of it, so it was almost like it was a proper game of football. And you imagine, I know we'll talk a bit about, the challenges and all this, that, and the other, and how things were a bit robust, shall we say. It was a little bit of a throwback to maybe football about 3 or 4 years ago. And, I know we work in an industry where if something happened yesterday, you've got to think twice about whether or not it's actually relevant anymore. It was actually quite nice that we could, remind ourselves of why we all love the game and why it's so important to so many people.
It was one of those, it felt to me, Gorsty, as well, the contest that actually, where I suppose the Premier League becomes more and more a league within leagues, and a side like Burnley, for example, one of the minnows in the division, are expected to come to somewhere like Anfield and really sit back and not try and take the game too much to the opposition. It wasn't that, was it? It was a case of both sides really throwing what they could at one another. Yeah,
Burnley don't tend to sit back too much, do they? They're not they do have very strong defensive-minded players in the 11, but it's always two up front, isn't it? It's always two wide men. Get it forward early, get it forward quick, knock it long. And they make the most of it, don't they? It wouldn't be something I'd like to watch every week. And I never enjoy watching Liverpool games against Burnley in the main, because they're always a bit of a slog and a bit of a tussle, and they make it a real physical battle, don't they? And it's not one for the purists, but that is their trademark, isn't it? Sean Dyche's team had 1 to 11 on the back of the shirts, and
in numerical order.
Yeah, it's the first time that's happened since 1998, apparently, which is a bit of a throwback. That was something that I quite enjoyed, but generally I'm not overly fond of Burnley and how they approach it and whatever else. But they do have a style that does work for them, and you have to kind of counteract that, don't you, in certain ways. And Liverpool did that quite well. There was a bit of a nervy start to the second half, and we felt that Liverpool would need that second goal. But once they got it, you thought, okay, well, this is pretty much going to be another win for Liverpool. And it was a question of can they get a third or a fourth. As it turned out, no. But overall, it was a great afternoon.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. It was sort of everything going to plan for Liverpool. And also you said it might not really have been one for the purists, their playing style, but certainly the 1 to 11 on the back of the shirt in formational order as well. Sort of, really put a smile across my face. But Doyle, Diogo Jota getting the scoring open, heading in Simicas's cross and getting his second goal in 2 games. To me, it feels as though there is a very, very good striker centre forward in there, ready now this season to be unlocked and take the keys for the Liverpool attack, perhaps, alongside the likes of Salah and Mane, goals through the middle.
Well, we saw that, didn't we, at the stage of last season when Jota was playing. It was Atalanta away, where he scored the hat-trick. He was playing a central position then. So he's always had that ability. I think it's interesting. I know we're not even going to talk about it today, but I don't think he'll play against Chelsea, for example. And the reason being is that I think the one thing he's not as good at Firmino at is controlling the ball, holding it up, and dropping into those positions where I think he'll need to do against Chelsea. And as we've seen many a time as well already, he's very good at coming off the bench and helping change games. But what's interesting is that he's done exactly what a centre forward should do. He scored the opening goal in both games. It's always the most important goal. The last couple of years it's been Salah. I think there was one year where Mane scored a lot of first goals in games, and for Jota, you're right, Liverpool, I mean, we kind of knew it anyway, but now it's definite, is that they do have these 4 very good striking or forward alternatives, I should say, for these 3 places. And it's a matter of whether or not they decide whether they need to bring somebody else in, between now and the transfer window closing next week, which I'm sure we'll get onto shortly. But for Jota, I mean, did he miss the end of last season? I can't even remember. I mean, he was injured, wasn't he, for the United game, wasn't he?
Jota, no, he played.
He got injured in the United game. He got injured in it. That's right.
He missed the Burnley game, was it?
And the West Brom game. That's right.
Yeah, West Brom was. Yeah.
That's right. Correct now. So, he did miss big parts of the season. We know that. But in terms of his debut campaign, he couldn't have really asked for much more when he was on the pitch. He's showing that again. He's had a full pre-season, which he didn't have last year, which is the same for an awful lot of players. You say Thiago, and of course that was the first time he'll have played a competitive game in front of loads of supporters then as well. And don't forget, the other time that he has played in front of quite a lot of fans at Anfield was only the other week against Bilbao, and he scored then as well in the 1-1 draw. So here's a player who, I know from having spoken to some people at Wolves, he tends to be a bit of a streaky goal scorer, where if he scores 1, he'll score about 5, and then he might not score again for about 4 weeks. So Liverpool just have to make the most of it while they can. Yeah,
I think also with a player like him in a Liverpool side, you can sort of flatten those streaks out, those bumps, I suppose, in terms of the volume of chances he's going to get created for him. And Gorst, he sort of bowed to the Kop, didn't he, when he took his goal? And as Doyle was saying, it was the first time he was in front of a home crowd in competitive action at a full Kop, and really sort of seemed to relish it. But in terms of the dynamic he brings to that centre forward role, it's different certainly to Firmino in terms of he gets a lot higher up against, say, the centre halves and took the header really well, but he's also got that mobility that maybe someone like a Divock Origi, for example, doesn't quite possess.
He does. He's got a lot to his game, to be fair to Jota. He's got 2 great feet. He can play on the right, on the left, or evidently down the middle. Great balance, great work ethic. Very good in the air, surprisingly, for someone who's, what is he, like about 5'8" or 9. The goal he scored on Saturday was his 4th header as a Liverpool player, and only Benteke, Cavani, and somebody else who I can't quite remember now off the top of my head have scored more. Calvert-Lewin, they've all scored since his Liverpool debut, which was 11 months ago. So he's got loads of strings to his bow, and I think Liverpool were hopeful that he could kind of make the step up when he moved from Wolves, and I think he did it a lot quicker than people thought, and now, as Doyle says, he's really shown himself to be a proper option, isn't he, for that, across the front. So Liverpool have got 4 options for the 3 positions. We're going to come on to Shaqiri leaving shortly, aren't we? And Divock Origi probably not what Liverpool fans want to see week in, week out. So Jota is a real proper option, as Jurgen Klopp might say, to the front three options.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk a bit then about Jurgen Klopp before we sort of get on to Mane's goal and some of the other individual performances. But after the game, Doyle, speaking with the press, he kind of spoke about the new officiating guidelines, I suppose, that have been passed out with kind of that higher level needed for a free kick to be given. To me, I would have thought it would have suited Liverpool, that kind of throwback to the rock and roll football, the ball thrashing around everywhere and a real open game. But I think the manager's a bit concerned that it could end up in a bit of an injury, and certainly up against a robust side like Burnley. Thought that might be been a side that maybe tried to push it a bit too far.
Yes, I mean, the problem you got there is that there's two things. One, just because the way that Klopp is obviously doesn't speak English as his first language. Yep. I think what he was trying to say was that he's quite happy with the new rules and he likes it. And a little bit like Solskjaer said yesterday for United, didn't he, against Southampton. But Klopp was just a bit worried that it's maybe gone from one extreme to the other. And he didn't mention any particular incidents against Burnley, but you could, there's two off the top of your head is when I think it was Ashley Barnes, was it? Decided to jump at Matip 2-footed and go round his neck, I think it was, and try and pull him back, and the referee just waved play on. And there was another one where, can't remember whether it was Barnes or Wood, went into when they challenged with Alisson for a header just towards half time, and he went in pretty strongly there as well, which would have probably been given as a free kick. I mean, well, to be honest, I don't think the second one was a free kick anyway, but it's just that it's kind of a build-up of the momentum that Burnley can do when they can, knock players over. I'm pretty right in saying there wasn't a booking at all in the game, was there? There wasn't a booking in the Liverpool game, which I can't remember the last time the Liverpool-Burnley games happened when nobody got booked, because there were some strong challenges coming in there. Yeah. I think Harvey Elliott was on the end of a couple early on, and then it was a fair challenge that he lost the ball, didn't he, near the edge of the area in the first half, but I can't remember whether Burnley got a shot off or not, but they certainly had an opportunity from dispossessing him. But, Burnley are Burnley. I just think it's like anything, isn't it? When they do real changes, you take a little bit of time to bed in. And I think fans would rather, it was like, if it's going to be like it was the first 2 weekends, they'd rather that than what we had last year. And I think Klopp's probably the same. He just wants to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that you can actually still foul people and it actually be a foul and it actually be dangerous and people should be punished accordingly.
And one of the things with Burnley, though, I suppose one of those other myths to throw out there, Gorst, I think it's now 95 games or something. They've set a new Premier League record for most consecutive games without having a red card, which with Burnley you don't really associate.
No, I wouldn't have ever guessed that. If you told me once that asked me to name the team in the Premier League, I would have chose Burnley last, bottom of that. But yeah, it's just the way they approach the game, isn't it? Throwback stuff. British core. I think Goodmanson's from Iceland and. McNeil is like McNeil Irish. Other than that, I think pretty much a lot of them are British based, aren't they? Chris Wood's from New Zealand. So they've got a very kind of old school, traditional squad, which seems to jar with what you see, with other top level clubs in modern football. But that's just the way they operate, don't they? Fair play to them. They'll go on and be looking to stay in the Premier League again and build again. And Sean Dyche continues to kind of do a really good job there, keeping them in the division. But I'm just glad I don't have to watch it every week, and Liverpool only played them twice. There'll always be this kind of thing of, it's Burnley and it's a tough place to go. But Liverpool have got a really good record at Turf Moor. It tends to be at Anfield when Burnley have a bit of joy, but thankfully that's out the way now and Liverpool can move on.
Yeah, okay. Talk to us about Sadio Mane then, because we were talking last week after Norwich that he was the only striker who hadn't been able to get off the mark, but back at Anfield, we were talking about it pre-match, that he will be one of those energised by the supporters, and he duly got his goal, finished off a brilliant team move.
Are you asking me?
Can do, whoever wants to take it on.
If only we could be back outside, then we'd know exactly.
Then we could have eye contact. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. We haven't got any trophy next to us this time. That's quite poor. We need to do better. I've got my cup of tea though, so that's okay.
Okay, tell us about Mane then.
Mane, yeah. Well, he could have got it. He almost could have got it against Norwich, couldn't he? I know Salah tried to feed him towards the end. He nearly got his goal then. But you've seen during the summer is that it's a different kind of Mane. He's benefited from his rest. He said it himself. He said he thinks it was almost probably the first summer that he was able to do that. And he said in an interview before the season that he feels mentally, he says physically and more importantly mentally refreshed as well, which suggests that, I know we've touched on that in the past about I think he had to go and see a psychologist, was it, Gorst, he was saying? Yeah, to because he was struggling with his form, wanted to know why. And sometimes it can just be little things like just having a break. you know, especially if you're playing that kind of high-level football, that high pressure. Because he's also one of the top players and probably the best player in Senegal, and he's got all the hopes of that country resting on him as well. So it's a lot. It's a little bit like Salah, isn't it, with Egypt? There's a lot resting on him there, and he's a lot to take on, and he's quite a laid-back chap for us. So for him to be struggling like that, the way that he clearly was, shows you that the impact that these things can have. But yeah, his goals. I mean, he took his goal brilliantly. I know we're probably talking a bit about the actual whole build-up to it and the way it was. That was like an old-school Liverpool goal in terms of a couple of years ago from Van Dijk, knocking out wide. Obviously, there's the kind of new face in Elliott, but then Trent putting the ball in, and no less than he deserved. I mean, I thought in the first half, Mane was to be honest, I found it was quite funny. He was just absolutely loving just going up against Burnley. He just loved it. He was like just going up against his marker. He was finding other ones, and it was interesting that he ended up scoring that goal from being in a central position. Like, if anything, he was more towards the right wing than the left. Yeah. So it kind of shows that, you know, Salah gets his goals from there, Jota scored his goals from there, Mane gets his goals from that. Most goals are scored from that position. But the point is that they weren't getting in each other's way. They seem to have that understanding, the three of them, in the same way that Salah and Mane had it with Firmino as well. So in that sense, that's work. But Mane as an individual, I think this season, while I don't think he'll ever get up to the record of goals that he scored when he first joined at that kind of second and third season where he was scoring 20 odd, I don't think Liverpool need him to. If he gets near to 20 and he plays like he has been in these last couple of games, and that's exactly what's required, because you've now got Jota there to help shoulder the goal scoring burden.
Yeah, I think that's interesting actually, Dory, because it's always been put across as Mane generally had a poor season. And I think most people would agree that he probably did, and certainly he said it himself at times that he wasn't anywhere near his best, but he still scored 16 in total in all competitions, which would be a really good return for most other forwards, wouldn't it? So if he can obviously build on that and as you say, get near around about that 20 mark, that's going to be, you know, great for Liverpool, because they've also got Jota who's chipping in as well. He got 13 last season, and I think the big one probably is Firmino this season. He didn't get anywhere near as many as he would have liked, did he, last season? 6, I think, off the top of my head. So if they can all contribute, it kind of takes the pressure off Salah a bit, doesn't it? Because he got 31 last season, but can't be expected to be the only person who scores for Liverpool. So yeah, it'll be great to see Mane back with fans kind of putting the wind in the sails, and a new look Mane, if you like.
He mentioned that as well, didn't he? He said, when we're scoring goals, he said it's nowhere near as much fun if you can't celebrate it with the fans. And he said that's almost as important as celebrating with your teammates. So you could tell he enjoyed his goal.
Yeah, definitely. He had that one in the first half as well, didn't he? That Trent sort of lobbed in from the right. As you say, he was in that kind of inside right position in the box. Again, shinned it over the bar with the volley, stretching to get to it. But I suppose as important as the actual goal scoring is the creation of it. It was back to sort of real classic Liverpool, the two fullbacks with the assists, but also Harvey Elliott popping up here, there and everywhere. You're talking about kind of that interchanging Doyle of the front three, but you throw Harvey Elliott into the mix as well, because there was that chance where second half had gone down the left, Henderson popping it over the top and crossed it, and Salah's effort blocked on the line. And Harvey Elliott just seems to have slotted in, and well, it's like he's been there an awful long time, and he's got so much confidence about it as well.
Well, he did have a year, didn't he, training with them in his first season when he was 16 and turned 17. And then he's had a year of going away and playing the Championship. It sounds a bit daft, but in some ways, the fact that there was no crowd for most of those games of the Championship, and it was just purely based on this kind of physicality of playing in that league, that perhaps might have helped him a little bit.
Because, and there's so many games at that level.
Exactly, and because he was able to play, as you say, well, he was nominated, wasn't he, for the EFL Young Player of the Year, which for somebody who was only 17, 18 at the end of the season, it's a massive deal, especially being out there on loan. So, now anybody who watched him during the first year that he was at Liverpool, whether he's playing for the under-21 team in the EFL trophy, or he's playing for the team in the UEFA Youth League, me and Gorst saw a few games of that, or the under-23s, because he just seemed to miss out the under-18s altogether completely. He just went straight into the under-23s. The stuff that he's done against Norwich a little bit, and obviously against Burnley, is exactly what he was doing in those games, but he's doing it with better players. He doesn't look out of place. I wrote something after, I think it was the Athletic Bilbao friendly. Basically, the best thing that you could say about him is that his teammates don't look at him as though he's 18. They don't try and make any concessions. They just give him these passes. They give him these balls and expect him to control it, to go into the right places, to deliver the right pass for the return, the kind of thing that you expect from somebody who's been playing for a number of years, and you wouldn't really expect an 18-year-old to be pulling off or executing. But it's the way that in some ways, that goal, the second goal, the way that he got into that position, controlled it, then it's the actual weight of the pass and to know exactly where to put it for Trent, who then didn't have to change stride, and was then able just to flick it over for Mane for the goal. And he can do that all the time. I mean, it's funny, we did the podcast last week, and Sean Bradbury mentioned the fact that me and Sean had done something not long after he joined, sort of a couple of times. We said, we're not going to build him up. And we mentioned Gerrard and Messi within about 2 minutes. But he's a little bit like Gerrard in the fact that he plays the pass that he wants basically he plays the ball to another player in a way that he then tells them what their next pass is going to be. And that's a sign of a really good player. And, I'm not putting too much pressure on him, because you only have to listen to what he says. He's a very confident individual. He's he's sensible as well. He's head screwed on. He's been brought up the right way, and being at Blackburn has really helped him an awful lot. I mean, we've put a story up today. We're saying that it's helped with his maturity. He feels as though he's grown up so much in the past 12 months, and he would have done. I mean, you forget what your profession is. When you go from 16 to 18, it's a massive. You do become you're going from childhood to adulthood. So in that sense, that he's gone from, 2 years ago, under 21s, and now he's playing in the Premier League against Burnley, and he'll think that he's got a chance of playing against Chelsea. And if he does play, no one's going to bat an eyelid and go, what's this lad doing playing? Already they can see that he's someone who can fit into that team and provide. And as Gorsty pointed out when we were at the game, within a couple of minutes, he got clobbered twice by Burnley. The old, here's the young lad, let's see how he copes with this. But completely forgetting that he'd been in the Championship for a year, and he just got up and went, all right, is that it? Okay, let's crack on then.
Yeah, it's just exciting, isn't it, Gorsty, that you kind of got a new player in, albeit he's not had to come with a £40 million price tag, but he's a lad who 2 years ago, Liverpool saw something, they went and got him, they brought him in, and now he's been nurtured into a position where he can come into the team. And I think sort of the two chances I spoke about before as well, one going down the left and the second for the goal, taking it out from sort of the Van Dijk lofted pass out to the right. That's kind of the Salah position you expect him to pick up, but him being so wide at times also enables those strikers to remain central.
Yeah, Liverpool pulled Burnley out of position brilliantly for that second goal. Obviously, the Van Dijk pass, which they weren't able to play last season just because the lads at centre-back in his place haven't got that kind of passing range, have they, with respect to them, an Nat Phillips or a Reece Williams. Liverpool have really missed, obviously, Van Dijk in a defensive sense, but just for those cross-field, change of, Liverpool go from front to the back in the blink of an eye. And I think that'll be a key facet for them this season. And Elliott was technically playing centre-mid, but there was so many times when he moved onto that right to help out with Trent and Salah, and those three were causing all kinds of problems, weren't they, down Burnley's left. So Trent kind of brought himself in field once he's seen Elliott out wide, and then just plays that pass, and Klopp called it a cheeky curveball, the pass, and then Mane sticks it away, and it was a great move. I kind of think with Elliott, I can understand why there's so much excitement about him. He's one of the best teenagers in the country, but he doesn't have to be a first team superstar at Liverpool at the moment. He's only 18. He doesn't turn 19 till April, I don't think. So he's got years and years on his side before you're looking at him as someone who should be contributing regularly for this Liverpool team. So I just temper the expectation and the excitement around him a little bit, because I don't think Liverpool need him to be this, superstar teenager. Just, carry on at the trajectory that he's on. Game time here and there in League Cups and FA Cups and whatever it may be, the odd appearance in the Premier League, and just kind of nurture it slowly, because there's absolutely no rush. Liverpool have got a great squad. Everyone's fit at the moment, so you don't need them to be weighing in every single week. But, as a Premier League debut goes, it was a superb performance.
Yeah, because if he starts 1-4 and then comes on a sub like one or two times in the other three, he'll end up with 30 appearances this season and probably 10 to 15 as a starter. And that's, from where he was 2 years ago. As we've said, God knows how many times already, he's only 18. There's no rush, as Gorsty said. They don't have to play him. And I suppose that's a difference to maybe sometimes in the past there have been very loud bike has just driven past my house. It's really put me off there. They don't have to play. They're not in the past. They've been in positions where they've had to play youngsters and they've had to put them in ahead of where they should have been. But with Elliott, they've managed him brilliantly from the minute that they signed him, with what they did with him. But given the year, as I said before, given the year at Melwood as it was then sent him to Blackburn to further his development. They did a brilliant job with him. I know the club have been well pleased, and that's why Leighton Clarkson's gone there. They hope they can help him do the same there that he were part this season. So Elliott is somebody. It was interesting. The crowd got excited whenever he got the ball. Certainly in the second half, whenever he got, they thought, "Oh, hang on, something could happen here." And it wasn't so much that they were willing him to do something because it was obviously the goodwill to a youngster. They actually genuinely thought something might happen. And in the end, as we've mentioned, 3 or 4 examples of where it did.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Leighton Clarkson got an assist of sorts, should we say, on his Blackburn debut as well against West Brom. A little mention for him in terms of Elliott and his development, Gorsty, and that step to Blackburn Rovers, I suppose, maybe wasn't the initial part of the master plan, was it? I suppose after not being able to move on Harry Wilson and Xherdan Shaqiri in the way that Liverpool wanted last summer, all of a sudden it opened up for Harvey Elliott to go out on loan, but wasn't always really part of the thinking.
No, it wasn't. I think the fact that he didn't go on loan straight away probably tells you that. He come in as a 16-year-old and he was playing in the League Cup and the FA Cup. And he actually made his Premier League debut, didn't he, against Sheffield United, was it, at the turn of 2020? He only got on for a couple of minutes, but he was in the squad and whatever else. So, yeah, I think the Blackburn loan last season came late in the window, if I remember. It was certainly in October when he moved. Liverpool choose their loan clubs very specifically, don't they? They don't just let any player go to any club. And I think they were pleased with Tony Mowbray's reputation for developing young players, young attacking players. I think they had Adam Armstrong last season as well, did they? He's just moved to Southampton, right? So
he had him at Coventry as well, actually, all the way back then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Liverpool were very, I wouldn't say wary, but they made sure that if Elliott was going to make a loan move somewhere, it was going to be the right place at the right time. And obviously, you've seen with Leighton Clarkson going back to Blackburn that Liverpool trust them to kind of play these players, give them game time. Otherwise, there's no point having them on loan. Liverpool have seen that with Ben Woodburn, haven't they, when he went to Sheffield United, didn't get a game and ended up coming back in the January. So, that year on loan seems to have been a massive belt for them. And of course, it would be, a season in the Championship at the age of 18 is probably ideal for Liverpool long term, ideal for Elliott. So, now he's back and he's a member of the squad and he's going to be playing fairly regularly, and it's going to be exciting to see his developments, as he approaches the end of his teens, which is still 18 months away, believe it or not.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's still got so much room, yet more development to come from Harvey Elliott. Let's move on, though, and let's talk about transfers. Let's talk about Xherdan Shaqiri and Doyle, looking as though we are very, very close now to him walking through the exit door, if he's not already.
Yes, £9.5 million to Lyon. No, Lyon had been after him for a little while. They offered, what was it, £4 million, I think, was it? Or not a lot, basically, initially. But the player had obviously told Liverpool earlier in the summer that he wanted to leave for game time. He was quite keen on Lyon. There were other clubs in for him. I can't remember off the top of my head. Gorsty knows these. Who was it? Sevilla, Villarreal, Napoli, and Lazio. That's it. So there was them. So for Lyon, it's a bit of a coup, really, because they're not exactly small clubs, those 4 that we just mentioned. So he obviously wanted to go there. It's interesting as well that 9.5 million is actually, when you look at it, I think he started 10 games over the last 2 years for Liverpool. And while we all know his talent, if he's not fit, he can't play. And unfortunately for Shaqiri, is that he was not fit often enough. Although, pretty sure I'm right in saying last season, for about the last 7 months last season, I'm not sure he missed a game through injury. I don't think. He was just not in the team because there were others ahead of him. And I think he spotted that this summer when he had a good Euros, he knew that his stock was pretty high. He could get the move that perhaps he wanted. And that's what it looks like he's going to get. And of course, you mentioned Harvey Elliott. The reason Harvey Elliott, obviously, I forgot about that. He went out on loan in the end is because Shaqiri didn't leave. It was Shaqiri who was supposed to go. Now, the minute it was obvious last October that he then was like, no, actually, I want to stay here. He went, okay, Harvey Elliott, we would have given you game time, but go to Blackburn, you'll get a lot more game time, come back, and we'll see what the situation is. at the end of the season, and because Shaqiri's going, the Liverpool are quite happy for Shaqiri to go for that right price, 9.5 million, because they've got someone like Harvey Elliott coming through, and they also in the League Cup and FA Cup we've seen Kate Gordon in the summer. Some of us saw him earlier this year playing for the under-18s, and he's a bit of a talent. Somebody's only 16, but they don't want to block the route of these kind of players. They've said many a time, because, as I said, Shaqiri's barely featured over the past 2 years. Him not being there isn't, unfortunately for him, a massive loss in that sense. I mean, he's a very good, very talented player, and I actually quite like him. But you can see why he didn't play as much as he could have done, just the way that he is and the way that Liverpool's set up. So him going means there's space for Elliott, and it could give a chance for Gordon. And it also means that possibly if another one goes, Liverpool might end up bringing somebody else in up front before the transfer window shuts. Before anybody quotes me.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to throw over to you, Gorst, the hospital pass for you, but sort of saying that Shaqiri's been a midfield option the last few years for Liverpool, but him moving on now, people will be sort of saying, well, where does that leave the quotas with the foreign players and this, that, and the other? Will that money be part of something else that's maybe reinvested at the top end of the pitch?
Yeah, I'd suggest it probably has to be. Otherwise, why are you letting him go? Okay, he wants to leave, and you can understand Klopp kind of agreeing to the players' wishes and giving a pat on the back and off you go, and fair play to you. But at some point, Liverpool can't just keep letting players go and just think everything's fine and you can just carry on without feeling any need to replace any of them. Because they're not a charity. They're not here to put the players first every single time. And also, what was the point of negotiating with Lyon? Lyon offering €5 million, and Liverpool are working hard behind the scenes to bring that price up to eventually get £9.5 million. If you're not looking to reinvest it, then what's the point? Why didn't you just say yes 2 weeks ago and off you go, Xherdan and whatever else? So I think Liverpool have to do something. I've felt that they've needed a forward all along, and now they're losing one. They're going to need someone, certainly, because they can't rely on, before going into 3 all season, Divock Origi. His last Liverpool goal was nearly a year ago now at Lincoln. Minamino, still not sure if he's going to be a long-term option, long-term answer. So they've got to for me, and I think it's going to be an interesting week to see if and when they do something. I hope they do, but the people who we're speaking to at the moment aren't Doyle a little bit reluctant to suggest that there's going to be a shiny new replacement coming in. But we know Liverpool play close to the chest throughout the club, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, Jurgen Klopp did say, didn't he, ahead of the game with Norwich in that first press conference of the season, we can't afford to spend money we don't have. So by that logic, 9.5 million coming in, is it the price for Shaqiri isn't really going to stretch too far, is it, Doyle?
It depends. It depends, really. I mean, I'm of the opinion that if they were going to get rid of Shaqiri and somebody else, whether it's Origi or not, they will have to bring somebody up front. And just interesting thing, just thinking about Minamino, I actually think with Jota now quite clearly an option down the middle, I do think that perhaps it may help Minamino, because Minamino's best position when he's played for Liverpool is on the left. And obviously you had Jota there, but Mane's the main man there. But if Jota's now being kind of transformed into it, he's going to be rotating a little bit with Firmino. Perhaps it could be that Minamino now and again will play instead of Mane. I don't know. I'm just wondering whether that's the thinking behind. They might want to keep him. And if they can move Origi on, I don't think it's unfair to suggest that maybe his time has come to an end. He couldn't even get the starting lineup, we've said, of those 2 friendlies at Anfield earlier this month, which is very indicative of his standing. And he'll leave with the best wishes of everybody. He's done his bit, hasn't he? He scored a goal in the European Cup finals. What more could he do for Liverpool in that sense? So, but I do think if Origi does go, and I would be very surprised if he doesn't, then I think there will be scope for Liverpool to bring in somebody in that front 3 area, possibly by the looks of it, given what I've just been saying, somebody that can either play out wide right or has the ability to also go down the middle, like a lot of the players they've got already do have. But if the right player's not there for the right place, they just won't do it, because I think they'll just go, well, we're quite happy to go with what we've got, even if Origi does go. But as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if Origi goes, and I wouldn't be surprised then if Liverpool then buy somebody else.
It's a difficult one, though, isn't it? Just come back to you on that in terms of the criteria. I'm with you. I think sort of wide right and someone who can play through the middle is probably the thing. But what we've already said in this podcast, you don't want to block Harvey Elliott's game time for minutes. Some of that might well come off the right-hand side as the season does go on. And yet also below him, you've got Gordon. So you're looking for more of an experienced option, but then that's going to cost more money. And how long are they going to stay around?
Well, Gordon's only 16, so I don't think you're blocking his route, even if this player plays the next 2 or 3 years that they bring in. He'd still only be 19, Gordon. Harvey Elliott's interesting. I think that's probably part of the reason why they played him in midfield. So you get him a bit more involved and give him the chance of getting more game time when they start rotating the team, because these opening few weeks of the season, they played 1 game a week. Klopp said it himself after the game against Burnley, that after the Chelsea game, for all the international players, they're then playing at least 2 games a week until about Easter or something like that. So that's when the intensity truly kicks in, and that's when they're going to have to start moving the players around, and that's why getting the minutes for Elliott in midfield will benefit him in the long run, because it gives him a chance of getting more game time playing somewhere else.
Yeah, and part of the reason that intensity is going to step up, certainly from next month onwards, is the return of Champions League football, Gorst. And on Thursday, we've got the draw for it. We'll be covering it live here on the Blood Red channel, as we have for the last few seasons. But it is coming back around, and I suppose Liverpool are waiting to see what options they may sort of be drawn against.
Yeah, it's kind of crept up this, hasn't it? The Champions League draw, it's always a big pointer for the season, and you're looking at how it might shape up and whatever else. And yeah, I'm not too sure about the specifics in terms of the pots and so on. I think Liverpool might be in pot 2. But yeah, it's always a good little afternoon of activity, isn't it? The Champions League draws, and Liverpool get last year Ajax, Atalanta, and Midtjylland. Yeah. To be fair, they've done okay in recent years in the Champions League draws. I think the season before that was, going back a bit now, trying to remember, Genk, Salzburg, and Napoli, wasn't it? There's always one team who you think, they're a bit of a big name across European football. And I think last season was just so unfortunate that Liverpool fans didn't get the chance to go to Amsterdam for a couple of days. And I think that was the first meeting since the 60s between the two teams, wasn't it? So that would have been a perfect one if it came around again this time round. So yeah, looking forward to seeing who they get, and then we shall see if me and Doyle are going to be part of the travelling pack for the away games.
Yeah, Liverpool are in pot 2, aren't they, for it, Doyle? So there is going to be at least a heavyweight in there. And
well, you say that, but if you look at the pot 2 is where you got Real Madrid, Barcelona, Juventus, Dortmund. This off the top of my head. There's Sevilla there. And obviously they got United in there. They can't play. The pot 1 teams, they can't play Chelsea or City. And then the other is Lille's in there, and they've lost half their players since winning the French league. Sporting Lisbon.
And Villarreal having won Europa.
Villarreal, yeah.
So I said heavyweights, actually. Since you say pot 2's really the strong one, isn't it?
Let's go Madrid are in the top pot, and I don't think Liverpool would want to play them. I mean, I think we know from experience that when those two teams, no matter who the managers are, in the last 10 years, whenever they've got together, 10, 15 years, it's been a really close game, a bit of a scrap, a bit of a battle, and that will be difficult for Liverpool. But Champions League, what do you expect? It's all going to be difficult. Liverpool, when they actually won it in 2019 in the group, they had Paris Saint-Germain and Napoli, and then the other team, Red Star Belgrade, the weakest team, they lost to. So I think they lost. Did they lose to all of them? I think they lost to all of them away and beat them all at home, didn't they?
Yeah. They had to beat Napoli in the last game to go through the
Allison. Yeah.
I think the way European football is at the moment now, I don't think Liverpool should be worried about facing anyone. Obviously, they can't face Man City or Chelsea. Everyone else shouldn't represent too much of a big fear. Real Madrid, they won back in April in those 2 legs, but I don't think Liverpool would be too worried now with a fully fit squad again playing them. Barcelona still got big names, of course, but they seem to be in a bit of a shambles, don't they? And the obvious one, of course, is Lionel Messi led Paris Saint-Germain. But I think, talking about the pot one teams there, I don't think there's too many that Liverpool are going to be terrified of being drawn alongside, and then you would expect them to be confident against the teams in pots 3 and 4.
Inter Milan are one as well, aren't they, in pot one? And
I've got pot one here.
They've lost a lot of their best players.
Yeah, no, pot one's got Chelsea and Man City in, which obviously Liverpool can't play. Bayern Munich, Atletico Madrid, Villarreal, Inter Milan, Sporting, and Lille. So to be fair, as you guys were sort of saying, other than maybe Bayern and Atletico, there's not. I know it's famous last words before the draw, but there's not too much to fear in there.
But I mean, then you're looking at pots 3 and 4, and you could just easily, as Gorst said, you could get an Ajax or get a Wolfsburg or get AC Milan. Who it used to be the UEFA Cup in the old days was arguably the toughest competition to win, because they were the teams that were usually up and coming. They were going to be next year's. They were going to win the title that year, and then they were going to go for the European Cup the next year. And I think sometimes with these lower pot teams, there can be a little bit of that in there. These teams that are bubbling under, such as AC Milan. Although to be fair, if they got up front, Ibrahimovic and Giroud, who I think it'd be like having me and Gorsty up front. In terms of age, that is. In terms of age. Obviously, to be fair, it'd have to be like having Gorsty and Gorsty, because they're both about 6'3", and Gorsty's the big man for a reason. Tall Paul. It's not been called Tall Paul for ages, has he?
No.
It's not been.
No, and they both got a good touch for a big man, which it certainly does. Anyway, right, let's leave it there. That wraps up Monday's Blood Red podcast. As I say, we will have a special Champions League draw on our dedicated YouTube channel for you on Thursday, so do come and join us for that one. But from myself, Guy Clarke, Paul Gorst and Ian Doyle, thanks for joining us.